feuds in Albania. This event has been organized by Associazione Comunità Papa Giovanni XXIII. It's an Italian official name, which means Association Community Pope John XXIII, PG23. Together with it's a non-violent peace corps called Operazione Colomba, and has got also the co-sponsorship of the Albanian Ombudsman Avvocati Populite. We have organized this parallel event in conjunction with the 33rd UPR working group, especially with the UPR of Albania, the Republic of Albania, which will take place after our event at 13:30. And we would like to raise awareness on a very important issue that constitutes a violation of human rights that is going on for a long time in Albania, which are the blood feuds. We have got here volunteers from Operazione Colomba and some professors that are very familiar with this issue. So we will listen to their presentations. Without taking so much time, because there are quite a number of speakers, I would like to tell you that this side event has got the streaming with Facebook, so also people from outside can follow it. And we do really hope that some recommendations on the blood feuds can come out also during the UPR of Albania. So I'm giving the floor first to Sara Janovic, who is a coordinator of Operazione Colomba, our non-violent civil peace corps in Albania. She has a PhD in international law and human rights. Sara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And today we are here to talk about the phenomenon of blood feuds, a blood that is still present in Albania today. What is a blood feud? According to Kanun, an ancient medieval code widespread in Albania, vendetta, Jakmarrje in Albanian, is a violent reaction to an injustice suffered that is not necessarily proportionate to the harm suffered. If vendetta took the form of murder, this could trigger a blood feud, Jakmarrje in Albanian. The Albanian word Jakmarrje is made up of the words Jak, blood, and Marja, taking, and literally means the taking of blood. Over the centuries, the practice of Jakmarrje was extended to include the male relatives of the murderer. This produced long chains of killings between feuding clans based on the law of retaliation. According to the ancient Kanun, blood feud applied only among men over 15. Children under 15 and women were not involved. In the face of dishonor, vendetta was not the only solution offered by the Kanun. A dishonored man could also choose to forgive the clan that had dishonored him. And at that time, forgiveness was a honorable choice for a further reconciliation, which could be achieved through mediation. Mediators were, and are even today somehow, community and or religious figures whose moral authority enabled them to lead the mediation, influencing the views and behavior of the feuding parties. If feuding clans decide to forgive an offense, a reconciliation ceremony closes the mediation process. Blood feud, forgiveness, and reconciliation constituted a justice system which regulated relations between native people and families in mountain and rural areas. In this type of society, the injured party declared vendetta as punishment for what it had suffered and to act as a deterrent against criminal actions. During centuries, blood feuds lived different times of revival or abandonment. But even though there were fewer instances of vendetta, traditional principles by which village communities were regulated remained in place. When communism fell in 1991, Albania was in a precarious and uncertain position. Investment in economic recovery was insufficient and basic services were not guaranteed. In 1997, the attempts at economic recovery ended in dramatic collapse. The population reacted by attacking the government's weapons depots in an attempt to take back what they had lost, and civil war broke out. The precarious situation and power vacuum led to the resurgence of blood feud as a traditional value to replace crumbling modernization values. While blood feud, to some extent, continued to regulate public order in the absence of an effective justice system, it also acquired new meaning. Blood feud was no longer just a means of resolving disputes. In fact, the meaning of the blood feud began to change, and its purpose to expand. It now started to be used in another way, due to many factors. First, the distribution of the land. After the end of the communist collectivism, led to a fight to reestablish private property. The result was an explosion in disputes. Second, the institutional vacuum. In the 90s, the instability of the state and its laws led to weak institutions and high levels of corruption in the public administration, even in the judiciary. In many cases, the vendetta became synonymous with private justice when state justice failed. Third, low level of education that led to inadequate and insufficient education and respect for the rules of democracy, particularly in the new suburban communities. Inhabitants can no longer apply traditional rules of social control and find it hard to adapt to the rules of a democratic state. Fourth, demography and geography. In the 90s, the population moved from the mountains into the towns and suburban areas, spreading traditional ways of speaking. Isolation of some mountain areas maintained strong traditions and resistance to the assimilation of new ideas. 5. Current social culture. In the 90s, weak economic development, internal migration from rural areas to the suburbs, and low education levels in many cases created the conditions for maintaining a culture based on family, patriarchy, and machismo. This led to clan culture behaviors, where the family is the nucleus of the patriarchal community and therefore its blood ties. Decisions are made on family basis. Honor is often more important than life, and social pressure determines the behavior of the individual and the belonging clan. A vendetta could turn into a blood feud, mainly for the inability to manage constructively emotions and for social pressure. Social pressure is influenced by the social environment of the victim's family, neighbors, relations, schools, mates, workmates, etc. Since in the current cultural environment, vendetta is more common than forgiveness and reconciliation, social pressure is negative since it can affect the decision to seek vendetta. And now let's see some data about the blood feud phenomenon. Operazione Colomba carries out a monitoring activity about data related to the blood feud phenomenon in Albania by reading and analyzing articles published in the press, both national and foreign, on a daily basis. The cases are classified in a database according to a subdivision between cases of vendetta and cases of blood feud. In 2018, the total number of cases is 137. 5 happened for blood feud and 132 for vendetta. The average is 11 cases per month, with a peak of 18 cases in the month of February 2018. The data collected in 2018 show a constant trend in the use of violence to approach disputes caused by different reasons, with an average of 11 cases per month of vengeance throughout the national territory. The 5 cases attributable to the blood feud result as a consequence of vengeance acts previously committed, according to mechanism of retaliation typical of private justice. Map 1 shows the distribution of the blood feud cases on the Albanian territory occurred in 2018. 2 happened in Tirana, 1 in Bural, and 1 in Shkodër. The 5th case, shown in diagram 2, is not present on the map since it occurred in Spain. It highlights the phenomenon of the so-called blood feud export, a phenomenon that involves the victims even when they are abroad. The highest number of cases of blood feuds is registered in Tirana. Map 2 illustrates the cases of vendetta on the Albanian territory occurred in 2018. As you can see, the phenomenon is present throughout the country. In the first 4 months of 2019, this year, we count 13 cases of vendetta, luckily not always mortal cases, and 2 possible cases of blood feud. Both happened in Tirana. As it is evident, blood feuds cause many serious human rights violations. First of all, they violate the right to life, freedom, and safety as enshrined in Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Furthermore, blood feuds affect also the right of equality, Article 1, because the victims invoking feuds often suffer social exclusion, in particular referring to job opportunities. So blood feuds violate also the right to work, Article 23, and education, Article 26. Because the victims involved in feuds often lose access to education and work-specific rights that need a positive obligation to be fulfilled by national institutions. As consequences of authorities and institutions' behavior, sometimes linked to cases of corruption or just negligence, it is violated also the equality before the law, Article 7, that happens when the punishment for a criminal record is not certain. On a second level, it is violating also the right to privacy, whenever authorities or media make improper use of personal data of victims involved in a vendetta. Finally, blood feud phenomenon could affect the right of asylum, Article 14. Requests for international protection suited by Albanian abroad are mainly because of vendetta, domestic violence, discrimination against minorities, human trafficking, and financial and health problems. It is not always easy to ascertain whether applicants are truly caught up in a vendetta. In some cases, there is a real need to leave Albania for this reason, since murders and injuries are not reported or well recorded, requests can be rejected for lack of proof. In other cases, the need to emigrate is caused by different conditions, but asylum seekers submit fake certificates of being involved in a vendetta to increase their possibilities to obtain asylum. So, European international protection procedures have been tightened to the detriment of those who truly are victims of a vendetta. Two victims of cases of rejection are Mario Maiolari and Indrit Pepa, killed respectively on 10th April and 6th September 2018. After Sweden refused international protection, Maiolari has been killed in Tirana as retaliation for a murder committed by his father. Indrit Pepa, after the denial of international protection by Germany, has been killed as revenge for a wounding committed by himself in 2013. In these cases, unfortunately, Albanian institutions failed to protect two people that became victims of the blood feud phenomenon. But luckily, since the last UPR cycle in 2014, some steps forward have been taken by the institutions to tackle the blood feud phenomenon. In that occasion, Sweden, Germany, United Kingdom, Italy, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Congo expressed their concern about the blood feud phenomenon. So in 2014, the Human Rights Council recommended that Albania set up a blood feud database and create a coordinating council to fight against the phenomenon, as required under Law 9389 of 2005. In March 2015, the Parliament passed a resolution to prevent blood feuds in Albania, publicly admitting that they exist and declaring that it is the state's duty to deal with and eradicate them. The Parliament urged the Coordinating Council for the Fight Against Blood Feud to take measures to prevent the phenomenon and requested assistance in this from a number of state bodies: Police, Ministry of Education and Sport, Ministry of Welfare and Youth, and from the public administration as well. Even though Law 9389 of 2005 has not been implemented, initial collaboration began in 2015 in Shkodra, promoted by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and the Ombudsman People's Advocate, involving different local government bodies and civil society. Meetings were organized in March, April, and September, but unfortunately they have not been followed up. In November 2016, the Albanian Interior Ministry promoted a national campaign to raise awareness that might have had an indirect impact on blood feuds. Entitled Mos Juaj por Duaj, Don't Shot But Love, the campaign against the illegal holding of firearms could have helped to reduce the number of cases in which a dispute can easily degenerate into a killing. Unfortunately, the campaign did not obtain the desired results, and the weapons handed over to the police were only a tiny proportion of those that Albanian citizens are assumed to hold. With regard to the right of access to education, in September 2017, Shkodra Regional Education Authority released an order to collaborate and provide information on children in self-isolation, since investigations at local schools had so far failed to identify any child in this condition. Moreover, a primary homeschooling program is available, thus apparently ensuring access to primary education. Concerning the direct protection of victims, unfortunately, police investigations have not always produced the desired results. There are certainly virtuous cases of police monitoring when a murder occurs to supervise and prevent possible future vendettas, but it is not always the routine, like in the Maiolari and Pepa cases. Another example is the murder of a 70-year-old man and his 17-year-old granddaughter on 14 June 2012 for a blood feud, which has yet to lead to justice being done. The ensuing feud has continued with another attempted murder. If the state cannot provide justice, forms of private justice may re-emerge. Legal action taken by the Albanian state to toughen penalties does not always produce tangible results when applied. The victim's family, which doesn't take part in the criminal proceedings, is often overlooked. Instead, focusing only to persecute the culprits, to focus on the victims in the Albanian context of family revenge is essential to reduce tensions between clans involved, and so to avoid other blood feuds. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks very much, Sarah, for having explained so well what the blood feuds are, the history, and also stressing the fact that there has been a change of the phenomenon and an expansion, and you have also underlined the different factors. You provided also some interesting data, underlined also the human rights violations that are going together with the blood feuds. Now, I'm honored to give the floor to Dr. Brunilda Zenelaga. She's a lecturer at the University of Tirana and an expert of Albania Foundation for Conflict Resolutions. And she will speak about reducing blood feud, revenge, and social conflicts in Albania through restorative practices and the restoring of justice system. Dr. Brunilda.
Thank you, Mara. I would like to start my speech quoting Shakespeare in his play, All's Well That Ends Well. And he said, "Love all, trust the few, do wrong to no one." Unfortunately, in some cases in our societies, love, trust, and goodness are replaced by hate, mistrust, and revenge. In contemporary societies, where the state and the justice system regulate the functioning of the society, building a trusted relationship between citizens and institutions is of crucial importance for ensuring social peace. Unlike traditional societies based on unwritten rules or custom laws, contemporary societies operate under the well-sanctioned rules of written laws. Albanian customary law contains a system of unwritten traditional norms, values, and customs, which has been inherited by word of mouth from one generation to another. In Albanian context, the codified traditional laws are known as kanun, usually identified with their regions, such as Kanun of Labria, Kanun of Merdita, etc. But the most influencing one, especially in the northern part of Albania, is known as Kanun of Lake Bagini because it has been formalized by Lake Bagini. It influenced the social life of northern part of Albania since the medieval period. One of the most important roles of it was to codify the rules of blood feud phenomenon. During the communist regime in Albania, 1945-1990, the Customary Law Act became too weak. If someone committed a murder, he was punished by criminal law of the time, and nobody could do the revenge. As a matter of fact, the communist regime tried to suppress or even undermine the influence of customary law in Albania, but immediately after the fall of the regime, the customary law was reactivated again, especially in the northern part of Albania. The mechanism of revenge and self-claim was reactivated, mainly because the role of institutions in the fight against criminality was weakened, and the mistrust of people on these institutions and the justice system was decreased. Generally, the revenge or blood feud in Albania, reactivated after the fall of communist regime, is not played in accordance to the old rules and not respect the canon rules, but use it as an excuse. As mentioned above, the lack of the trust in the institutions contributed to the spread of the practice of private justice. The main elements that make many citizens untrustable are the high level of corruption in justice system, the lack of security of punishment against those who have killed for blood feud, lack of appropriate police intervention, the existence of a mentality that fits the blood feud practice, the insufficiency of the state apparatus in guaranteeing the security of citizens that endanger life for motives related to blood feuds. With the aim of fighting corruption and restoring the citizens' trust in the justice system, in June 21, 2016, Albanian Parliament voted the constitutional reform. As many as 25 articles of Albanian constitution have been amended. A reform in justice is a complex process. It included the creation of new institutions such as the establishment of a special anti-corruption and organized crime prosecutor, known as SPAC, the establishment of a new anti-corruption court, the establishment of Supreme Juridical Council and the Supreme Prosecution Council, that are two structures that aim to ensure the effectiveness and independence of justice and prosecution systems. Also, an important pillar of justice reform is the vetting process of judges and prosecutors, which constitutes a transitional qualification assessment. These professionals are studied under three pillars: the integrity of assets accumulated during their career, possible ties to the organized crime, and professional misconduct. The implementation of this reform is considered very important, so Albanian people are served by a juridical system based on European standards. The reform process requires the drafting of new laws as well, related to the juridical system. Among others, the law number 37/2017, Code of Criminal Justice for Juveniles, is one of the most important laws that ensure a legal framework on juvenile justice that is consistent with Albanian Constitution, Convention of the Organization of the United Nations about children's rights, and other international organization standards and norms that aim to protect juveniles and effectively protect the most high interest of juveniles. The application of the restorative practice provided in the code will also have a positive impact on situations where juveniles and minors are involved in blood feuds and revenge. Restorative programs can help, complement, or even substitute the penal justice, helping the restoring of the juridical system and its effectiveness. In Albania, mediation and reconciliation were frequently used in customary law, but in the new laws aim to formalize the mediation process and the restorative practices in accordance with contemporary European standards. It is necessary to mention that the law of mediation was firstly approved by an Albanian parliament in 1999. After that, the new law of mediation was approved in 2003, and later in 2011, we have now the law number 10,385, which was amended in 2018. And according to this new law, mediation is an out-of-court activity through which the parties seek to settle a dispute with the assistance of a third neutral person, that is the mediator, in order to come to an acceptable solution for the parties and which does not contradict the law. Project on victim-offender mediation, restorative justice, community conferencing, and peacemaking circles have been implemented in many areas of Albania through the cooperation and experience exchange with Albanian NGOs, other institutional partners, and state institutions. It is important to emphasize the role that the Foundation for Conflict Resolution and Reconciliation of Disputes has given in this field, especially on the improvement of the legislation for the implementation of victim-offender mediation, increase of institutions' awareness of the relevant international instruments, implementing of restorative practices, etc. Regarding the blood feud and revenge cases, the disputes were handling through group conferencing. The restorative practice of group conferencing was applied with a combination of tradition with the modern approaches of conflict management. In such participatory process, the victim, offender, and their family members and supporters who could help to resolve the conflict like relatives of both parties, known for their reputation, and friends of both parties are involved in the group conferencing model. I came to the end of my presentation. In fact, it is important to mention that in traditional mediation, the perspective is focused mostly on the past rather than the future. But in the contemporary mediation, the restorative practices, the parties are future-oriented. Using this philosophy, let's hope that restoring justice system in Albania will serve as an important tool to restore the culture of trust, of peace and tolerance in Albania. As Mother Teresa said, we fear the future because we are wasting today. The restorative practice, which aimed at harmonizing the relationship between people, remind us not to waste today in order to construct a better future.
Thanks very much, Brunilda, and for this very interesting insight on the restorative justice, and also underlining the progress made by the Republic of Albania also on improving the justice system, and of course there is much more to be done. Now I'm giving the floor to another Brunilda, Dr. Brunilda Pali. She's a researcher of the KU Leuven Institute of Criminology in Belgium and secretary of the European Forum of Restorative Justice.
Thank you very much. Yes, everybody in Albania is called Brunilda, so now you won't. Thanks to everybody for being here. Talking about the phenomenon of blood feuds has never been easy. Depending on the speaker's situatedness, the subject is likely to raise outrage, curiosity, or denial. Embodied complexity today, as a Northern Albanian, as a woman, as a social scientist, and as a peace and human rights activist, my starting point today is the same as the one made by the American novelist James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. I am convinced, therefore, that we need to face with intellectual, scientific, and ethical integrity the gravity of the problem, its complexity, and we need, in light of that first step, to act coherently and persistently to tackle its impact, and as this event calls for, to eradicate it. The gravity of the problem and its complexity have been explored, and important recommendations have been put forward in the third edition of the descriptive document of the phenomenon of Jakmarrjes to raise awareness among Albanian and international institutions. It is written in 2017 by Operazione Colomba, and I think it is an extremely well-researched and written document. I encourage all of you to read it in depth. In my talk today, I would like to emphasize 5 main points. First point, I think trying to understand the phenomenon and its complexity does not mean legitimizing it. At the same time, being normative about the need to eradicate it does not mean either demonizing a culture nor essentializing it. The canon, the customary law that supports the phenomenon of vendetta and blood feuds, should be neither mystified nor disrespected. It has to be understood for what it has been. An important regulatory mechanism for communal life. A law of the community, as many similar ones have existed and continue to exist around the world. At the roots of the word community, we find the word common and munus. Munus means both gift and obligation or debt. In fact, to be in a community, in other words, is at the same time a gift and an obligation. And communities are inclined to maintain their social harmony, punish everyone breaking its law, and restore social harmony. These regulatory mechanisms have had an important role in Albanian history, but that is exactly the point. No law has ever been written on stone, but in history, and the basic definition of history is change. Second point, the phenomenon of blood feuds itself is also constantly changing, as we heard. It's adapting to new socioeconomic and cultural contexts. New disputes are created, such as complicated land and property disputes, disputes related to human trafficking, deaths, and even car accidents. Children and women are also being killed, and often decisions to retaliate, instead of being well considered and deliberated as they used to, are taken impulsively and indiscriminately. Likewise, the knowledge of the canon among Albanians is ironically rather low. So, more than acts of honor, embedded in some kind of communal logic, therefore, blood feuds have started to resemble acts of desperation and have shattered lives, as whole families are being confined, losing all of their rights, subsistence, mental health, and even social standing in their communities. My third point, for the reasons mentioned above, rather than conceiving and approaching the phenomenon of blood feuds as a quasi-mystical, ethnic, exotic, or primordial problem, the state and all the other relevant social actors have to frame it and tackle it as a problem, as a current social problem, which needs a serious but also a timely and creative response. So what can the state do very concretely? Well, serious prevention to start with. Given that most of the causes of blood feuds are known, and they are linked to property, trafficking, gun availability, corruption, poverty and deep inequality, patriarchy and lack of education, the state has to tackle these problems to the best of its ability by contributing to the economic and cultural development of our society and to the delivery of high-quality public services. Furthermore, to tackle the problem, the state has to start urgently a long-term national strategy and establish a coordinating council, as it is in fact stipulated in the law 9389 of 2005. It is unacceptable, I think, that still today the data available on the phenomenon varies considerably depending on the source, and that the work of the state and other social actors remains uncoordinated, or that they are at a different page relating their understanding and approach to the phenomenon. The statistical database with standard criteria for identifying families involved in blood feuds and a coordinating council, therefore, that follows a coherent national strategy and a unified approach are the absolute starting. The legal approach followed by the state, while it is very important, is not sufficient in its current form. Imposing tougher penalties on offences committed in connection with a blood feud has an important function and sends an important message, but does not solve the conflict, does not restore relations in the community, and leaves completely unattended the victims' families. Paying attention to the victims and the community in the Albanian context of family vendettas is essential to reducing the tensions between these families involved and thus avoiding the continuation of the feuds. But paying attention to the victims of vendettas is also a basic obligation of the state, especially ensuring their right to safety and access to basic services, in fact, such as hospitals, work, and schools. In the beginning, I mentioned that Albanians have become famous for their use of the canon, but very few of them are actually knowledgeable about it. So it is my perhaps controversial opinion that instead of ignoring the canon, the state needs to promote the good knowledge of the canon by its legal experts, schools of law, and the like. The more people will know and understand its content and put it in a historical context, as I mentioned, the better able they will be to fight the phenomenon of blood feuds. How will that come about? My fourth point, and this is my main point, so the use of restorative justice in relation to the phenomenon of blood feuds. Restorative justice is a new paradigm of justice applied currently in actually in every democratic state, but which has its origins in all the Aboriginal and indigenous communities of the world. At its core, restorative justice has a few interrelated features. First, it starts considering the harmful act according to its life-related context, and not according or not only to a definition of the law. Crime is therefore, according to the restorative paradigm, a break in human and social relations. Two, once we accept this as our starting point, restorative justice calls for the involvement in the justice process of all the relevant stakeholders, offenders, victims, and communities. A third party that is not a judge, but a mediator supports the stakeholders to go through their conflict. Three, finally, what drives this justice process is not the punishment of the offender, but the reparation and restoration of the harm towards the victim and the community. The principles underpinning restorative justice, therefore, may facilitate projects of reconciliation by calling upon wrongdoers to acknowledge their wrong they have caused, offering recognition of victims' suffering and reparation to them, providing opportunities for truth-telling and wrong clarification for all sides, and starting the process of bridge building between divided parts of societies and communities. Now, the applicability of the restorative philosophy to the phenomenon of the blood feud is striking, but so are the similarities of restorative justice with mediation, as this is in fact codified in the canon. We can even argue that just as today we see two complementary forms of justice, the punishment-oriented criminal justice system and the restoration-oriented restorative justice system, in the canon too, we have a retaliatory form of justice expressed mainly through vendettas and blood feuds, and a restorative type of justice characterized by forgiveness, reconciliation, and besa, which is a word of honor and promise. In the canon, these two orientations are both worthy and honorable, so much so as to make the path toward justice seem like sheer choice. A mediator in the canon is conceived as someone who does not incur guilt, has a high moral standing, and plays the role of the messenger of peace, reconciliation, God, or the future. A mediator treats everyone equally, does not construct factual truth, and does not engage in judgment. A blood feud sounds actually so essentialized for its emphasis on blood relations, but the canon spectacularly suggests that while blood relations are important, brotherhood can be acquired. Through a simple ritual where families in dispute drink each other's blood, now a drop is sufficient there, they and their descendants become related to each other. So having such a powerful and culturally significant resource embedded in the Albanian society, it is incredible how restorative justice has not been on the agenda in a very strong and consistent way. One-to-one mediation between families who are victims of blood feuds, but also the creation of a national reconciliation process through restorative justice are two possible and necessary paths to put an end to the entire blood feud phenomenon. It is important, in my opinion, that in this process of embedding restorative justice in the Albanian society at large, we need to be highly creative. We cannot replicate tradition here, but we have to create a new approach that is anchored in the tradition, in addition to being anchored in other movements and discourses such as human rights and peacemaking, among others. Just as the phenomenon of blood feud is changing, the means through which we tackle it should also be adapted. The young generation of mediators and peacemakers must be therefore raised according to restorative principles. The canon itself in Article 669 says that the mediator may be a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, or even a priest. The mediator cannot therefore only be the elder of the village. Often there is no village left anymore. Communities are living in the suburbs, peripheries, cities, and even abroad, as we heard. Therefore, we need to be creative and expand our imagination as to who can do this task. The vocation to undertake this role has to remain strong, but further techniques can be learned. Just like shooting a gun can be learned, making peace can also be learned. To delegitimize the phenomenon of blood feuds and eventually to eradicate it, restorative justice in the Albanian context has to be steered and strongly backed, therefore, by the state. Restorative justice is in every democratic state part of the justice system, recognized and embedded in legislations and justice processes. It is important, therefore, for the legitimacy of the state that the state steers this process, which has in its center the reparation and restoration of the victim and the community as a process that is coherent with the punishment of the offender. In this way, the state would ensure safety of the victims, protect their human rights, but also the right of the offender to return to a normal life without fear of repercussion, once he has paid his debt through his sentence. Offenders who have not been caught could surrender themselves to enable reconciliation between the parties, which would ensure, of course, their own safety once they have served their sentence, but also protect their families from vendettas. Restorative justice, therefore, conceived for blood feuds, is in no way competing with the legal institutions, but providing the right mechanisms that support them. Backed by the state, restorative processes could be led by highly moral authoritative figures such as intellectuals, elders, religious institutional representatives, or highly trained, perhaps young mediators. The involvement of authoritative personalities in restorative justice should be anchored in the positive elements of traditional Albanian culture to encourage cultural change. And here I come to my final point. It is clear that such a complex, embedded and growing phenomenon cannot be eradicated by an isolated or one-tool approach. It needs a massive cultural shift. This cultural shift has to signify that things such as human life, human rights, forgiveness, non-violence, and peace are superior in fact to violence, revenge, and human misery. Changing thinking about vendetta can also be encouraged by those who have decided to forgive and to accept reconciliation with the other side. The media and the schools have an enormous role in educating the community and the future generations in non-violence and the respect of human rights. Positive social pressure that draws on the positive elements of traditional local culture can also be maintained through awareness-raising actions. The importance of this is paramount since blood feuds are instigated often by negative social pressure and social environment. Support for those wishing to choose the path of reconciliation to put an end to blood feuds needs to be unwavering. Forgiveness and reconciliation are considered honorable in Albanian cultural tradition. We need to make that clear and say it loud and in every possible way. Culture contamination is necessary in this process, as it can strengthen and adapt the positive feature of traditional Albanian culture to suit modern Albanian society. Culture transformation will be enabled through the introduction of educational and cultural programs based on the nonviolent management of disputes, education in peace, reconciliation and respect for human rights in school, workplaces, and our cities. In conclusion, I'm convinced that we must find new ways to prevent and react to blood feuds, where we actually mobilize the ordinary stock of knowledge on how to handle social conflicts that already exist in our society, where we nourish our respect for our justice system and human rights, but also where we use our imagination, in fact, that this phenomenon requires. This is extremely hard work, but cannot be done without persisting and convinced commitment. Thank you.
Many thanks, Monilda, for these very important 5 points that you underline, and also for your call to creativity in tackling this issue of the blood feuds, and been also speaking by the need of a mass cultural shift in order to fight this phenomenon. Now, our next speaker is Tommaso Di Nicola. He's a long-term field volunteer of Operazione Colomba in Albania. So he brings the experience from the field, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. And good afternoon to everyone. And thank you for your attendance. The work of Operazione Colomba in Albania takes into account 3 main categories of stakeholders: the families involved in the phenomenon of blood feuds, the Albanian civil society, and local institutions. The monitoring visits to the families in blood feud are the core of our presence in Albania. Through regular visits, we build trustworthy relationships with families belonging to both feuding parties. The creation of such a bond made possible the implementation of tailored paths for the overcoming of grief, rage, and ultimately the desire for revenge. We support the injured party in the reprocessing of sorrow and help them to constructively convey their emotions. On multiple occasions, we have been told by members of the families in the blood feud that our presence at their side has helped them cope with the hardships that come with their complex situation, be it the loss of a close relative due to a vendetta, or the social isolation that comes from being involved in this phenomenon. Besides the visits, we also organize self-help groups for women and girls, and recreational activities for young men under blood feud. These kind of activities, which often include testimonies of people who experienced first-hand loss and forgiveness, support path of restorative justice as they help the victims of the phenomenon in the reelaboration of their pain and conflict history and promote the use of alternative dispute resolutions. Another dimension of our work with the families in blood feud is that of civil escorts. Civil escorts are non-violent accompaniments that we, as unarmed civilian volunteers, carry out to ensure greater freedom of movement and to enable people at risk of vendetta to access healthcare, education, recreation opportunities, and visit their relatives in jail due to blood feud. In May and June 2018, for instance, we wrote 3 young men affected by the blood feud phenomenon to job interviews in Colomba. Being involved in a blood feud deepens or contributes to the social and economic marginalization of individuals and entire families. For young men, this often means that they face discrimination when interviewed for a job or restriction to their freedom of movements due to fear and anxiety for their safety, and therefore less opportunities to find a job. On other occasions, accompanying measures have been carried out in order to let families, youth, and women involved in blood feuds enjoy some leisure time or social events of importance for them with serenity. In many cases, people under blood feud cannot enjoy those simple leisure family moments that would otherwise be normal. Last summer, we escorted a man who had been self-isolated for a long time because of a blood feud and his family to a village in the northern Albanian mountains. It was the first time back in their own village after 20 years. It is also worth noting that the phenomenon of blood feuds does not solely concern those persons directly involved in a feud. Also the rest of Albanian society has a stake in it. On one hand, the social internal migration and constantly to follow internal migration and consequently to consistently manifest itself throughout Albanian territory and even abroad. On the other, social pressure, such as neighborhood talks, sway the choices of families, pushing them towards revenge rather than forgiveness. Therefore, since 2010, Operazione Colomba has been campaigning all over Albania in order to promote a culture of peace, forgiveness, and reconciliation. The 2013 campaign, 5,000 Signatures for Life, for instance, has seen the involvement of a number of Albanian MPs and even earned the prize of then Albanian President Giovanni. In the summer 2014, the volunteers of Operazione Colomba, together with other local civil society organizations and international NGOs, marched from Shkodër to Tirana in order to encourage Albanian institutions to take a strong stand against the phenomenon. On this occasion, a delegation from our association had a private meeting with President Nishani and asked him to support the implementation of the law 9389 of May 4, 2005. Finally, on December 10, 2018, the 17th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Operazione Colomba launched the Raising Awareness campaign KundërGjakmarrjes against the blood feuds, in order to invite all Albanian citizens to stand by and show solidarity towards people in blood feud, and support the creation of a social environment that favors the peaceful resolution of disputes between families and individuals. We ask individuals, groups, associations, organizations, and institutions to join the campaign by posting a sticker that contains the logo of the campaign itself on the front doors, their cars, and the businesses. By joining the campaign, people commit themselves to avoid vengeance, to discourage its use, and to promote the use of alternative dispute resolution methods. The KundërGjakmarrjes campaign is being further spread through public events, meetings in local schools and parishes, and during meetings with local institutions. Besides, citizens and institutions are encouraged to contribute to the spreading of the campaign by posting, as a symbol of their support and commitment, a picture with these stickers that you can find on the table here, and the hashtag KundërGjakmarrjes on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Last but not least, we believe that the work of advocacy and networking with local institutions and civil society organizations is of the utmost importance. Through several meetings, the organization of roundtables, the drafting and distribution of efforts, we try to actively engage all interested stakeholders in order to raise awareness about the phenomenon of blood feuds and to create a network of local actors able to promptly address material and psychological needs that may affect families under blood feud, especially their most vulnerable members, such as women, children, and self-isolated men. Finally, the ultimate goal of our advocacy work with local, national, and international institutions is the joint development of a comprehensive strategy for the overall overcome of the phenomenon, as we are aware that long-lasting and sustainable solutions to this phenomenon can only come from the will of the Albanian institutions to take responsibility for the most vulnerable among their citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks, Tommaso, for having described so well the tremendous work of Operazione Colomba and our volunteers, and also the suffering of the people you share the life with, and also for all the advocacy efforts, the advocacy work that you have done nationally and locally and nationally, even to meet the president, the former president of Albania. Thanks very much. Our last speaker is Giulia Zurlini-Panza. She is coordinator together with Sara Yarnovic of the Operazione Colomba project in Albania. She has a PhD in humanities. Please, Giulia.
Thank you and good morning, everybody. Starting from what has been said so far, I would like first of all to highlight the best practice emerged through the work that since 2010 Operazione Colomba is carrying on in Albania, alongside the victims of the blood feud phenomenon. Consequently, I will report some suggestions to foster the Albanian institutions' efforts meant to defeat this practice. As best practice, I start mentioning the direct sharing of volunteers' life with the one of the blood feud victims, which means to visit families involved in this practice, standing by them. Direct sharing, on one hand, helps volunteers to understand the human rights violations these people suffered in order to implement effective intervention strategies, and, on the other hand, allowed volunteers to build a trustworthy relationship with the ones involved in a feud, to carry out mediation processes with particular features such as problem-solving type of mediation, which can help the parties thinking about the negative impact of vendetta compared with the positive impact of leaving the plan to take revenge behind. In some cases, even choosing to forgive and to reconcile with the other family. Narrative type of mediation that implies recognizing the history of pain, but also the history of hope, which accompany the conflict's narrative told by the victims, in order to help the parties to take the necessary steps aimed at transforming their hope, consisting in their desire to end hostility, into reality. And transformative type of mediation, which involves empowerment aimed at enabling people to understand their ability to manage problems constructively, and recognition that promotes the development of empathy and mutual understanding among the parties. All these kinds of mediation practices require active listening, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, dialogue, equal proximity to all sides in conflict, and a particular attention to the bereaved families, in order to, first of all, help the families to heal their emotional bonds, through managing their emotion constructively and channeling the anger they feel in a positive direction. Secondly, to support the offender's family in the accomplishment of confidence-building gestures designed to lower the tension and to rebuild trust for possible rapprochement with the victim's family. Moreover, to protect the privacy of the victims of blood feuds for the purpose of preventing any escalation of the conflict. Finally, to use a positive social pressure to discourage vendetta, and where it is possible, to foster the adoption of the traditional local culture's positive elements, such as forgiveness and reconciliation, which they may need to be adapted to the contemporary context. In this way, Even though the mediation does not lead to an official reconciliation between the parties, it does reduce the tension between them and enables the victims of the dispute to continue to lead their lives and get back to normality. The bereaved can start planning their futures. The relatives of the offender can leave fear of vendetta behind. Another best practice I would like to mention is an armed accompaniment, civilian escorts made by Italian volunteers in a disarmed and non-violent way, which allow the freedom of movement for those involved in blood feud. Finally, I mentioned demonstration to denounce the human rights violation due to this social plague, training on non-violent conflict management, and awareness-raising campaign of the phenomenon where authoritative and charismatic figures, such as intellectuals, village elders, religious or institutional representatives, testimonials, and those who decided to forgive the killing of a relative or to accept reconciliation with the other side, can send messages of peace. These activities enable civil society to defeat the marginalization of those involved in feuds, and the mentality that honor is more important than life. By this means, the social environment, neighbors, schoolmates, workmates, etc., can constructively influence the decision of the families in conflict, using a positive social pressure. The results of this best practice can be quoted in the words of some persons involved in the phenomenon, who took part to our women and youth groups activities. A woman stated, "My life has changed a lot since I met the volunteers from Operazione Colomba. I have opened myself up to the world and to life. Your work is really precious. Your visits give hope and fill us with joy. The fact of having people like you who have listened to my problems and my outbursts has given me calmness and greater serenity even in my heart. I changed completely. I started to explain my problems and discuss them with others. I have received so much help, but the fact that you gave me trust has allowed me to gain confidence in myself, confidence that has enabled me to look for a job. Because of our meeting, I felt considered and valued." Another young man said, "Your work is both beautiful and offered freely, and very few people do it, because it is difficult and risky at the same time. We, thanks to your presence, feel free, especially because you are people who work to change, to a certain extent, ideas and negative opinions. In fact, the activities done together have changed me profoundly. They helped me so much to overcome the anger and the pain I felt. I also understood our mentality much more thanks to you. Your activities have really influenced the mentality of my life and of my family. Mentally, their situation has changed a lot. Before, we had closed minds. Thanks to your presence, we have opened our mind to the world. I believe that also the situation of vendetta within my family has changed, thanks to you. It will take time. We therefore consider you as family friends. Friends in the sense also of family counselors. At the conclusion of this speech, I would like to offer institutions some suggestions based on Operazione Colomba's experience to go on promoting the elimination of blood feuds in Albania by involving civil society and feuding families. These suggestions are aimed at supporting the protection of the right to life, the fight against the phenomenon's deep-rooted causes, and the development of a national joint strategy to tackle this practice all over Albania. Operazione Colomba identifies 4 categories of recommendations. First, victims' protection. Take steps to ensure the safety of Albanians who are victims of vendetta and to ensure they are able to access basic services, hospitals, places of work, schools, etc. Set up a compensation and support fund for families who are bereaved as a result of vendetta. Create a social state dedicated to dealing with the structural factors that enable the phenomenon to exist and to contributing to the economic and cultural development of society and to the delivery of services. Second, legal and justice. Reform the state justice system through fight against corruption, pre-trial detention for anyone committing an offense connected with a blood feud, ensure sentences are served, ensure justice is the same for all, amend and implement Law 9389 of 3rd May 2005 to set up a coordination council on blood feuds. Within the police, improve the emergency services aimed at handling blood feuds causes with an ad hoc free phone number. Improve standard criteria for identifying families involved in blood feuds, continuously protecting their privacy, and for the publication of official data on the actual extent of blood feuds. Third, mediation. Support mediation between families who are the victims of a blood feud, and the creation of a national reconciliation process through restorative justice and mediation counseling. Introduce legal and institutional instruments, such as the law on the civil mediation of disputes, that promote the eradication of the phenomenon and recognize and fight anything that can cause or prolong vendetta. Fourth, education. Systematically introduce educational and cultural programs based on the nonviolent management of disputes, education in peace, reconciliation and respect for human rights in schools, places of work, meeting places, youth center in the most highly populated towns. Introduce and implement special prison programs and associated re-education and reintegration plans for prisoners who have committed blood feud offenses. It is on this aspect that we wish to call upon the Albanian institution, on which we appreciate the efforts undertaken in recent years to counter the blood feud phenomenon, and to which we continue to offer our collaboration to implement all the necessary legal, institutional, economic, and social measures to eradicate this practice. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Julia. Having underlined the good practices and also brought the testimonies directly of the people you have shared the life with, and also for the recommendations. So I repeat in the hope that can be brought also during the UPR of Albania. Now, before going into the debate, if you have got questions and so on, we would like to project a short video that in a way shows the work done in Albania. Well, this video has shown some of the activities of our non-violent courts, Operazione Colomba in Albania. As you can see, we have been remained seized on the issue for many years. And also here at the United Nations, the Human Rights Council, and the UPR process, while in the first cycle, the government of Albania was not acknowledging the presence of this phenomenon, then thanks to the advocacy and also to the recommendation made by some states, at the second cycle, the report was acknowledging it, and they took also some important steps to tackle. So we are continuing raising this issue so that we can help also the government of Albania to eradicate this phenomenon fully that makes so many suffering among the people. Okay, now if there are questions about what we have heard from our speakers on all the aspects, they've been quite complimentary in their speeches. So please, the floor is yours. Please. If you can introduce briefly, telling your name, your organization.
So my name I can tell you, Boris Engelson. I don't know which organization you are referring to. I am a disorganized person. I'm still alive. I'm a journalist accredited with the UN here. And first, I came here on the basis of this flyer, which one can find on the tables. I was very much surprised why suddenly this topic here. I slowly understand, although the last time I heard about the problem of Albanian society was a few years back, when on the contrary they told us how Albania is unique by its empathy, welcoming attitude, the only country where there were more Jews at the end of the war than at the start, etc. And that the Albanians could never shed a single drop of blood. They don't even know that there is blood in the veins. Today we hear exactly the opposite, but we are used to in this room. So something I can't understand is why this still exists in Albania after 2 centuries of preaching all over Europe, East and West, and the Balkans, and the colonial countries about the marvels and virtues of democracy and the 3 estates, and the fact that there is justice and you are not supposed to do justice yourself, etc. And they have even been blessed by 50 years of communism and even the most brotherly communists ever in the Roja, etc. And still, after all this preaching, you think that it's not enough preaching and you have to start new preaching by Operazione Colomba. So explain me why the former preachings did not work and why your miraculous stand up and walk will be effective.
Okay. Thanks very much. I think we can collect other questions and then give the word to our speakers. If there is any other question, please.
Yeah, it's a question about the future. Professor Pali, you have spoken about a new approach to be creative. You have spoken about young generation. And my question is, what about the Europe? What about the desire of Albania to be part of Europe? And could you imagine that this new approach can have a link with this new European culture? Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Here?
No, you can speak from Giovanni.
Well, thank you. Congratulations for the work. My name is Rodrigo. I'm from the Permanent Mission of Brazil. I apologize for I lost the first part of the panel. and maybe I will ask for something that has already been said. But I believe it was Dr. Brunelda Palu mentioned the problem of data. So I'd like to, if you could develop more and talk about the numbers and figures related to this issue. And the comment, I don't know if you are aware, but there is a Brazilian movie based on a novel by Albanian author, I believe, that related to this issue. Yeah. The writer, I believe, is Manu Kadare. Okay, and the film was produced by Walter Salles Jr. As a Brazilian movie maker. And I believe in English the name of the movie is Behind the Sun. I can provide more accurate information in another moment. Thank you.
My name is Andrzej Owca. I am from Vivat International. Thank you very much for your presentations, and thank you very much for your comments. Actually, I would like to share with you my short comment. It's not so much question, but comment is, yeah. What I like very much for your presentation is like, because it is it would be very easy to simply condemn blood feud or vendetta or whatever it is, yeah. But I think that is not possible, even not thinkable, that we start to reflect, to think, to change, to whatever, yeah, without this historical cultural context, and that is tremendous. And such changes did not happen overnight. It was like maybe generations, but once we have to, when somebody said that even the longest way, we start with first step, yeah. So thank you very, very much, and that was really enriching for me.
Thanks very much. Since there are just 10 minutes remaining, because then we have to go upstairs in 20 for the of Albania, I'm giving the floor to the speakers to react to your questions and comments. I just would like to add one question, because Sarah, you were bringing the data, and there was also, if I'm correct, one example of one case exported but I presume that the exportation of this case is also with the migration flux going on, can be a raising phenomenon that is also called to fight this issue, not only in Albania but also in other countries. So if you can elaborate a bit on this issue. Who would like to answer first? Okay.
So basically on the data, I believe Sarah and Julie, I think that's your best place to make a comment on the data. I also find it pretty impressive that there are 5-6 sources and they are all different on the data. So I find it unacceptable, and I think it's a first step to put together a group of people that make identifiable, standards about what is blood feud, how are we to define it, and maintain a very non-defensive open database so that at least we can have some clarity and coherence into the data. That is a start. But more comments I think are from the colleagues. Related to this idea that I had that it has to be a creative process, I'm very convinced about that, because restorative justice, as I said, is a justice mechanism or paradigm that is fully accepted in European countries. I live in Belgium. Belgium has one of the most progressive restorative justice legislations. It's well accepted in the law, coexists fully with the criminal justice system. There is no problem with that. So I think Albania has to follow a very similar path. I think there are enough elements in our even canon and historical traditional codes to make it even easier, perhaps in a way, to have that language of restorative justice, which in some countries is very foreign to them. So some countries are very much struggling to think in a restorative way or to conceive what is that about, because they have very poor elements in their societies that relate to this way of thinking. So in those countries we have a much harder, let's say, task to instill restorative justice, whereas in Albania I think we have level 4. And it's fully complementary. The attention for the victims is fully complementary. The victims directive is requiring attention for the victims, is requiring victims' rights. So Albania has to fully comply actually with all the European standards in the implementation of the restorative justice path, let's say. Whereas, as to the comment of the disorganized colleague, why is it still there?
And also there is a lot of diaspora which could bring back other type of...
Yeah, sure. But so in the beginning we also mentioned that it is in a way still there, but it's not always there in the same way. So it's always changing. It's a very cultural phenomenon. It changes according to the system. Okay, communism repressed it. After the weakening of the state, it becomes in a way of self-justice, but also now with the migration process, it becomes a way of identity. It's a very, very complex phenomenon, but our argument, I think, today is not that this is simple or can be solved like this. I don't think it can be solved by preaching, and so we are absolutely not in a preaching mode. I am Northern Albanian myself, but without facing it, it cannot be solved. And according to me, this is the problem, that there is some kind of denial, because it's a phenomenon that it creates a lot of sensitivity, of course. Yeah? So I can imagine that the European state is in some kind of defensiveness about it, because it sounds, and because it comes with a lot of judgment, but I think that's absolutely unfair. It has to be put in a historical plane. A lot of countries have had customary law. Even today, a lot of countries do still have customary law. So there is nothing to demonize about it, but we need honesty, intellectual honesty. We need to understand it. We need to put it on a historical plane. And then because it is changing, we need also changing tools, new tools that are fully modern and adapted to the current situation. So this, I think, is our main point at this moment.
Thanks,
May I add something? The colleagues, we were speaking about how important it is to create networks, because as you may see in the reports, there are different data about the same phenomenon, but maybe there are different operations about the same phenomenon. So it is very important to create the culture of networking for this phenomenon, in function of eradicating this phenomenon. So this can be another point to add to what Comunità said before.
Okay. Sarah?
Okay, what about data? I will be very quickly because we have no much time. And so, first of all, about the data, it's true that we have no inorganic, complex system of data with a database with police and government bodies data. Because that's true that we have some data because we consider blood feuds counting both parties of the both adversary families. Instead, some institutional bodies count only one part of the conflict. So just the part that committed something, that is guilty of something, let's say, of the murder, for example, because they often live in self-isolation. So that's why we have different data. And that's true that there is not a database that can count all the families involved. We know that some institutional bodies like police and the judiciary, they have some sort of database, but we can't access them. And so there's not a unique database. And what about the export of the phenomenon? That's true that it happens. It happens quite often nowadays. And the more involved countries in this phenomenon are Italy, Greece, and also some countries in the north, where the Albanian community is more present, in the north of Europe, more present. And what about the mentality of people that are living abroad, relating to your question? That's true that some people are coming back to Albania to visit families or to live again in Albania, bringing their new mentality, but that's true also the opposite, because unfortunately some of the relatives that live outside the country, they bring back like an old mentality because they are struck in that moment they left the country. So sometimes it happens that families inside the country wanted to go on to abandon the mentality of the blood feud. Instead, the relatives that live abroad, they want to go on living in a sort of idea of respect that is overcome by the rest of the family. I don't know if it's clear.
Thanks, Sarah. And Julia?
Yes, I would like also to add something about the fact that, of course, we don't do here at home, but we had the opportunity to share our lives with the people that are affected by this phenomenon, and they lived in a very marginalized way. So the first thing I think that is important is not to live alone with these people and to stay by them in order to understand what are the needs, even their basic needs. And by the direct sharing, we have the opportunity to understand that two very important things that institution and civil society can do is not only standing by them, but protecting the victims, which means using the judiciary system and also the restorative justice, starting from the point of view of the victims of the phenomenon. And in some cases, also from the bereaved family, so the one who had lost a family member and suffered, and sometimes it suffered also a very big and huge social pressure in order to take revenge.
I will just briefly add something from my experience in the field. These families that we work with, I found loneliness. So if there can be as much preaching as you want, be it under communism or in a democratic regime, and beautiful words and ideas like brotherhood, solidarity, and development, progress. But if for some people these words remain just words up in the air, and they're not, these words, these ideas are not lived and experienced firsthand, then this context that Julia mentioned of isolation, marginalization, but these words, these ideas are not experienced, lived, then can develop frustration, rage, and violence. And for me, this is one of the reasons why we can still see this phenomenon. And then I very much agree with Julia about our work is a day by day, is a process of standing by these people.
Thanks, Tommaso. So first of all, let us give a clap to our speakers. I would like to thank you who attended to this event, also for the questions and comments made. And if you fill the registration form circulating in the room, you can receive all the speeches. Also for those who have come a bit later, so they are all available. And I would like to remind you also to collect this report that is very interesting. It has been distributed also to many member states here at the United Nations. That is a work done very, very seriously and can be very insightful for all of you.
If I may, I would like to thank all of you, because my question was a bit making fun of all of you, as I always do to preachers. But then your response was quite unexpected, because you have apparently a deep thinking on these issues, and when asked a question, maybe a difficult question, and not just reading your speech, you are not preachers at all. You seem to understand the complexity of all these sociological and ethnological issues, and this would deserve much more discussion than just key today on Albania. These are issues which all sociologists and ethnographers are confronted with. The fact that, for example, usually we think if people go abroad to the modern world, etc., you challenge this assertion. This is rarely discussed. A lot of things you say have deep insight and are rarely discussed. So I encourage you to go on preaching that way to Museum of Ethnology, Faculty of Sociology, etc., because really you seem to have a know-how and a reflection on that. I will just end with another teasing, in that honor is more important than life, could be written by Winston Churchill.
Thanks for your encouragement. And we hope that you can make an article on this side event, being a journalist. Okay, thanks very much to all of you. And see you upstairs.